So DVD December
Stevie B.
1st.
Stevie B,
Right.
December 1st. Yeah. On
Perfect.
rocketed.org is the podcast app or the
Thank
podcast, whatever it is. It's a good one, man. It's good. Stevie B is unreal.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. Thank you all for joining. I'm glad you're here. I know I'm certainly glad that I'm here. I know I certainly need to be here. And I'm looking forward to being here with you tonight. As we always do, let's start with the set-aside prayer. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right. We're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of tradition, would everyone who feels so inclined, everybody, please put one hand up like this. Everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're raising the roof. That's right. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to have fun tonight. I hope you guys have fun tonight. It's entirely optional, but it's highly recommended. Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here. And thanks to Rob for being here to do all the recording and all the beautiful MC work that Rob does behind the scenes. And I am just trying to change. There we go. There we go. Just trying to change the view on my screen so I can see everyone who's here. And I need someone to do reading for us tonight. Vincent, my man, Vincent. Sorry to put you on the spot, but would you be okay to read for us tonight?
Absolutely, Kevin. I'd be happy to.
All right, Vincent. All right. I love it. Okay, so tonight, guys, we're going to be on chapter 4, the chapter We Agnostics. And congratulations, everyone, by the way. Congratulations to everyone, okay? Because we made it through step 1, all right? We are functionally now in the Big Book of Alcoholics. We are out of step 1. We are out of the portion of our book that refers to the problem, okay? So we all know, talked about it many times, the 3 things that an alcoholic of my type needs to know in order to achieve recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need to know what the problem is, I need to know what the solution is, and I need a program of action. Program of action that I can do to achieve that solution to overcome the problem. We are done the problem. We have finished the problem. So congratulations, everybody. We've made it through the problem. And now we are going to begin talking about our solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I like to say, our solution is a very, very simple thing. When boiled down in Alcoholics Anonymous, I believe our solution can be boiled down to one word. It's a 3-letter word, and it starts with a G. G to the O-D, baby. G-dizzle, baby. Okay? The G-bomb. The G-bomb. That's it. That's really it. Okay? And one of the things that I like to be clear about with the guys that I work with and with y'all is that Alcoholics Anonymous, guys, does not get me sober. Alcoholics Anonymous does not get me sober. The 12 steps do not get me sober. The big book does not get me sober. Being of service, prayer and meditation, inventory, making amends, all of these things do not get me sober. All of these things get me connected to the solution. They get me connected to God, and God gets me sober. Okay, you guys with me on that? You understand the difference? Alcoholics Anonymous does not get me sober. What AA does is creates an environment where I can begin to have a relationship with this power, a relationship with God, and God gets me sober. Okay. I believe that strongly. And I think it's important to always remember what the central fact of our life needs to be. The central fact of my life today is the absolute certainty that my Creator has entered into my heart and my life in a way which is indeed miraculous. And that has only happened. I'm only able to access that power, in my experience, through a 12-step program of action and doing a 12-step program of action called Alcoholics Anonymous. I do the program of action to achieve the solution, to overcome the problem. Okay. And if I was going to summarize the basic promise of Alcoholics Anonymous, I believe it is simply that God conquers alcoholism. God conquers alcoholism. And then that we have a program of action that anyone can do. Remember, guys, when we talked about the Oxford group, remember the Oxford group? Way back when we were talking about the history of AA, okay? And they originally came up with the 6-step program of action. Okay, you can go to page 263 in our book and read about the Oxfords, okay? They had nothing to do with not drinking. They were not a non-drinking society. That was not their deal. What they developed was a series of actions that any person, anyone could take to achieve a deeper experience and a deeper relationship with God. It just so happened at that time that Roland Hazard was looking for a deeper relationship with God. Why? Because he had met with Dr. Carl Jung, who we read about last week, a couple weeks ago. And Carl Jung had told him, Roland, alcoholics of your type are doomed except for other than having a spiritual awakening, a vital spiritual experience. Okay. As a result, Roland went and took the actions of the Oxford group, and that's all AA really is. AA is a series of actions, spiritual in nature, that a guy like me can take to access power that is more powerful than my alcoholism. Okay. So tonight, guys, we're going to read the chapter, We Agnostics. I love this chapter. And I used to hate this chapter. I used to really, really hate this chapter. And that's because I'm an alcoholic. And as an alcoholic, if I don't understand something, I automatically hate it. Okay? Maybe I'm alone in that. No one here else, nobody else like that. If I don't like something, I automatically hate it. I automatically develop a resentment towards it. Okay? As an alcoholic, anytime there's something that I hear that I don't like, also, I get confused. Okay? If I hear something I don't like, I just get confused. Well, in this chapter, man, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't like. I didn't like a lot of it. And frankly, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it at all. I had no idea a lot of the very antiquated references that are being made in this chapter, a lot of the language, I didn't understand. A lot of the references I didn't understand. I had no idea. Sitting alone, 19 years old, in a psych ward after a very real suicide attempt. I couldn't stay sober, and I'm trying to sort through this book. I'm trying to make heads or tails of it, and I could not figure it out whatsoever. And I hated it. And thank God I've had brilliant members of AA in my life. So Joe and Charlie, for example, okay, If you've never listened to a Joe and Charlie Big Book study, like, don't go to bed tonight until you've listened to a Joe and Charlie Big Book study. Okay. Other guys like Cowboy Ray, my early sponsors who took the time, men and women who took the time to help me go through this book and explain what's going on in this book and explain this chapter in a way that I could begin to understand it. And that is, I believe, my calling. And that's my duty and my obligation and my joy, frankly, is to be here with you guys tonight and to do the same, and to try to help you understand some of the things that I didn't understand. So let's get started. We're going to be on page 44. So one of the first things that I needed to understand before we move forward at all is to understand what this chapter is really talking about. And the first thing that I like to point out to my sponsees is that this chapter is about step 2. Okay. And in fact, if you're here and you're new and you've never done this, feel free to write step 2 at the top of the page above chapter 4 or We Agnostics, whatever. This chapter is specifically about step 2. Okay. I didn't know that. I did not know that for many years. Okay. There's only 2 chapters in the book that are entirely devoted to one step. One is working with others, is entirely devoted to step 12. We'll get there. But this chapter is entirely devoted to step 2. Step 2 saying, of course, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Okay. Now, from all of the work that we've done over the last many weeks, you should well understand what we mean when we talk about insanity. When we're talking about insanity, alcoholic insanity, we are not talking about the crazy things that I did when I was drinking and the crazy war stories and the crazy drunkalogs. That is not the insanity of alcoholism. The insanity of alcoholism, as I've beaten the drum very hard over the last many weeks, is simply and singularly, as far as Alcoholics Anonymous is concerned, as far as our book is concerned, when we talk about alcoholic insanity, we are simply referring to the insane thought that occurs before I pick up a drink. Okay? We just read step 1 in the 12 and 12 the other day. It said we are smitten by an insane urge that condemns us to go on drinking. Smitten by an insane urge. So in step 2, when we're saying came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, what I'm really saying is I'm coming to believe that there is a power that can restore my thinking into an ability to now differentiate the true from the false, so that I no longer fall prey to what we call the big lie. Okay. I no longer fall prey to that insane thought. I no longer fall prey to the desperate experiment of thinking that this time I'm going to pick up a drink and it'll be okay, or this time I pick up a drink and I don't even care what happens, on and on and on. All of that thinking, that is the insanity of alcoholism. And in step 2, all that we're doing is coming to believe that there is a power greater than ourselves, and that that power is more powerful than my alcoholism. Okay. So this chapter is about one thing. It's about step 2. And when I work with sponsees and we go through this chapter, there's going to be what we call the step 2 questions. There's 2 step 2 questions in particular, or the step 2 propositions, you might refer to them as. Okay. And there's 2 of them. I will point them out. Don't worry. Okay. I will let you know when we get to those step 2 questions. Okay. And they're good questions for me to ask to myself today. But what I really want to do, in the spirit of, again, guys, always making that transition from takers to being. I want to see everybody. Transition.
Giver.
There you go. Transition from takers to
Givers.
givers. Right. Exactly, you guys. That's the transition I need to make in AA. In that spirit, understand that I'm giving you these 2 questions, or I'm pointing out these 2 questions so that you are empowered when you are sponsoring someone. You know where these 2 questions are when it comes time, when you've gone through the cycles, you've qualified them as an alcoholic. This is how we do step 2. Okay. there is an action that we can do in step 2. And I go through these 2 questions with my sponsees. Okay. I think sometimes people skip over step 2 and we just get to step 3 and we just make that decision. Yeah. Okay. There are definite questions that we can ask in step 2. And so I'll point them out to you when we get there. Now let's talk about the chapter, the title rather of this chapter, We Agnostics. Okay. We Agnostics. What does that mean? Well, what does agnostic mean? I will tell you what I have learned. Agnostic is an ancient word. It comes from Greek. Okay. Ag meaning without, and gnosis meaning knowledge. Okay. Agnostic means without knowledge. Okay. And what it means to me today is that although it may be possible that I believe in God, and I come to AA and I have a lot of faith, I come to AA and maybe I've studied religion as I had, okay? And I come to AA and I think I know a lot about God. What I am lacking is a relationship with God, which is to say, I don't truly know God. Okay. I may know him a little bit, but not in a sufficient enough way to keep me sober. If I really had this power within me, I would not drink. That's what our book says. Okay. Dr. Bob, for example, one of our co-founders, had been attending the Oxford group meetings. Okay. And he believed in God. He was all around and knew about God, but he did not know God. So we agnostics, we who are without knowledge of God, we who are without a relationship to God. Guys, let me ask you a question. Do you think, is it possible for me to believe in God and yet keep him out of my life? Of course it is. Of course it is. Is it possible for me to know what God's will is and still live completely driven on self-will? Of course it is. Of course it is. Okay. And so we agnostics is just indicating that we are people who do not have a relationship with God sufficient enough to keep us sober. Now, one of the things I like to point out is that they named this chapter We Agnostics, not two agnostics or four agnostics. And I believe that is because we are all agnostic when we get to AA. We're all agnostic. None of us really know God in a sufficient enough way in order to overcome our alcoholic problem. Okay. In order to do that, what I need to do is that program of action to get connected to the power. And I feel like I want to share this too, quickly. One of the big mistakes I made in Alcoholics Anonymous for many years is thinking that what I needed to do in steps 2 and 3 was become spiritual, become like a holy person. And then if I became spiritual, then I could do the steps. Okay. And I, like a lot of things in my life and a lot of things in my recovery, I had that completely backwards. Okay. In step 2, all I'm doing is saying, yes, there is something. I'm not saying that I'm connected to it yet. I'm not saying that I know it yet. All I'm saying is that there is something, or there could even be something. Okay. It's not until step 12 where it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. I don't have the spiritual awakening in steps 2 and 3. Okay. In step 2 tonight, all we're doing is just making a very, very beginning, just a beginning in this journey in recovery. It doesn't mean that I fully know God yet. And so I kept, and that was a problem for me, because in steps 2 and 3, I kept waiting for this big thing to happen to me so that I could go ahead and do the rest of the steps. And the big thing wasn't happening. Well, it wasn't happening because the big thing happens as a result of the steps. I don't come to believe in God and then do the steps. I do the steps to get connected to God. You guys with me on that? Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so let's start. And Vincent's going to read for us tonight, Brad. I was looking for a reader and you hadn't joined the call yet. So Vincent's going to read, which is wonderful. And the first paragraph in this book, or rather the first paragraph in this chapter, is vitally important, guys. It's vitally important relative to step 1, okay? And so I'm going to ask Vincent to read it for us, then we're going to stop at the end of the paragraph and I'm going to talk about it for a moment. Vincent, back to you. Over to you, I'll say. Over to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. Chapter 4, We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there, Vincent. Okay. So this, guys, is a summary, really, of the previous 44 pages. Those 2 lines are really a summary of all of step 1, okay, condensed. And one of the things that Joe and Charlie teach is, if someone comes to me and says, Kevin, do you think I might be an alcoholic? Well, I have no idea, but we are just given 2 very good questions to ask, okay? So the first one, if when I honestly want to, I find I cannot quit entirely. Why is that? Because of the mental obsession, the insanity of alcoholism, an inability to distinguish the true from the false, the insane urge that precedes our first drink, okay? If I honestly want to, I cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking, I have little control over the amount that I take. Why is that? Because of the physical allergy. Then I may be, you are probably alcoholic is what it says, okay? So those 2 questions, very, very important, very, very powerful, working with our sponsees. Those 2 questions. Do I have control over the amount that I drink once I start? If they're a real alcoholic, they got to say no. Okay, and when you want to stop and you've sworn off and said, I'm not going to do it anymore, are you able to stay away from that first drink? Man, if they're a real alcoholic, they got to say no. Okay, and if that be the case, that they have this physical allergy, they have this mental obsession, they are probably alcoholic. So guys, at a bare minimum, when you're starting with, you have a brand newcomer come to you and say, I need help. If you don't know where to start, you don't know where to begin, page 44, those 2 questions, that's a really good place to start. Okay, that's the best place to start. Those 2 questions on page 44 really summarize the previous 44 pages. Okay, back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face.
Hey, and if we're a real alcoholic, that's what we're looking at. Okay, those are the 2 alternatives that we have. I know someone who says if it weren't for Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps, and beautiful people in the program, I would be dead, drunk, or in jail. Okay, that's the way that it is. That's how we are. That's who we are. That's what we're looking at here. And when we talk about alcoholic death, a lot of the times, and this is just a sad fact, but a lot of the times what we experience in AA is suicide. We get a lot of people who die by suicide in AA. It's very sad, very, very sad. Okay, but that often is an alcoholic death. And all you need to do is go to the chapter 2 employers, and I'll prove it to you, because there's 3 examples at the beginning of the chapter 2 employers, 3 men that they refer to, and all 3 of those men end up taking their own life. Okay, so when we say an alcoholic death, that's what we're referring to. But I know something that is an even worse fate than an alcoholic death. Far worse than an alcoholic death. and that is an alcoholic life. And that is what we're doomed to, an alcoholic life of not weeks or months of misery, but years and years and years and years of misery, and continuing to harm everyone we ever loved and destroy everything we ever cared about. And by the time you're going to die, everyone who ever knew you will be glad that you're gone. Okay? It's a terrible, terrible thing. And to be doomed to an alcoholic life, in my opinion, is far worse than an alcoholic death. And these are not easy alternatives to face. To face doing all of this work that's required of us in AA, okay? We have to hit a significant bottom, a significant level of pain, a significant level of surrender. We have to truly concede to our innermost selves that there is for us no other way other than complete dedication and devotion to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what had to happen for me, is that I had to surrender to the fact that there was no other way. This is all that there is for me. But the beautiful thing, guys, is that what used to feel like a stick in AA, okay, a punishment in AA, over time gradually becomes a carrot, okay? And today, do I seem like I'm miserable to you guys doing this work with you guys? No, this is not misery to me anymore. It was, believe me, it was. But this work, this spiritual basis, living my life on a spiritual basis today is a joy. Okay, it has become a joy. We have an opportunity to become weller than well in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, alcoholism is the only disease where the sufferer of the disease can become better than they were before they had the disease. You guys with me on that? That is one of the promises of Alcoholics Anonymous, is we can get rocketed into this fourth dimension. So I'm here to tell you, if you're at that turning point, that basis of life, where am I going to go? Alcoholic death or spiritual basis, and it's not looking real good. I understand. I do understand. None of the 12 steps look terrible when I'm on this side of them, okay? They look terrible until I actually did them and got to the other side of them and realized the life that was available to me on the other side of, and the ability to feel ease and comfort in sobriety, okay? So, back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you, but cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted.
Okay, so just very quickly, what's the difference between an atheist and an agnostic? Okay, people use these words interchangeably sometimes. What we just learned what an agnostic is someone who doesn't know God. They may believe in God, but they're not sure. An atheist is someone who says that they are certain there is no God. Okay, and the joke is it actually takes a lot of faith to be an atheist. It takes a lot of faith to believe that there is no God. Okay, I think. When you kind of think about it that way. But an atheist, so just to be clear, an atheist is someone who believes there is no God. An agnostic is someone who does not know, is still searching, is unsure, and is still building and developing this relationship with God, with the eternal, okay? Although today we may not be connected to it yet. That's the difference between an atheist and an agnostic. Okay, back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral, we could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly.
So I don't know about you guys, but I had moral and philosophical convictions galore. And I had tried everything in my life to get myself sober. And I studied and I read lots of books and I studied lots of stuff and I studied religious philosophy in university. And I was so smart when I got to AA. I was so smart, I was almost dead. That's how smart I was, okay? My problem, as I've said before, guys, is not that I don't know things. My problem is that I don't do things in AA, okay? And all of these philosophies, all of these convictions that I had, all the things that I thought that I knew were useless in the face of alcoholism, okay? We're going to talk more about willpower as we continue to go through this work. But my willpower, when it came to picking up the first drink and triggering that physical allergy, was absolutely useless. And it did not matter what books I read, what stuff I studied, the convictions that I made, none of it mattered. You know, I love, I heard a speaker say one time, and it meant a lot to me, that if for me to think that I'm gonna fight, like, you know, sometimes we'll hear people say, like, I'm gonna fight my addiction with everything I have. Okay, I'm really gonna fight this, fight my alcoholism. It's like, brother, stop, stop fighting. Because it's like me getting in the boxing ring with Muhammad Ali in his prime. It does not matter what moves I think I'm going to make. It does not matter how hard I train or how smart I think I'm going to be. Okay? Like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. Okay? And when alcoholism punched me in the face over and over and over and over, it's just like, Kevin, stay down. Stay down, Kevin. Okay? No, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. All right. And I kept trying to fight on my own. I kept trying to fight this disease. I kept trying to fight alcoholism, and it doesn't matter. The only thing for me to do was to stop and get out of the ring. Okay. Throw in the towel, surrender, and concede to my innermost self that I have this problem, and then begin this program of action and become open-minded a little bit to this spiritual way of life, open-minded a little bit to the idea of developing this relationship with God. Okay, back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where and how were we to find this power?
You know what's interesting in that sentence, when you look, first time they use the word power, it's a little lowercase p. The second time they use the word power, it's a lowercase p again, okay? And then as soon as they say a power greater than ourselves, it's capital P, okay? And in the English language, anytime you capitalize something like that, you're giving it great significance, okay? And you're giving it almost supernatural significance. From now on, when we see the word power, we're going to see the word power in capital letters, okay? One of the things I like to point out too, have you ever heard, you know, people talk about powerless. We're powerless all the time. You know, I'm powerless over people, places, and things, and all that good stuff. I have a concordance to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which has every word in a book, and you can go through and look it all up. I will tell you that I have checked the word powerless. Anybody want to take a guess how many times the word powerless is used in the first 164 pages of our book? Anybody? One time. One time. Okay. The word powerless is in our book one time. How many times in the first 164 pages does it use the word power, baby? Power. If I remember correctly, it's around 57 times. 57 times our book refers to power. Okay. We are not powerless. Okay. I do not stay sober today because I am powerless over alcohol. I stay sober today because I'm able and I have gained access to the power, capital P power. Okay. And if you're here and you're just experiencing kind of the spiritual life for the first time, hi, Deb, nice to see you. You're experiencing just God for the first time, this idea even of God, just try to get your arms around the word power. Okay. Just try to get your arms around that word. That's what we're here. That's what we're talking about. Okay. We are not powerless. Okay. We gain access to a power, and that power solves all of our problems. All of my problems are in the third dimension, and all of my solutions are in the fourth dimension when I gain access to this power. Okay. Back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored.
Okay, so I just want to point out, guys, that's what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is for. That's what this book is about. Its main object is to enable me to find a power greater than myself that will solve my problem. Okay, that's what this book is about. Now, how do I find God? How do we do that in AA? I'll give you a hint. There are 12 ways that we find God in AA. Okay, and so the main object of this book really is to give us a design for living and teach us how to use the spiritual toolkit given to us in the 12 steps. And that spiritual toolkit is what allows a man like me, hopeless, alcoholic, to be lifted up from that problem, from finding God and gaining access to this power. Benjamin, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Gaining access to this power. That's what this book is about. This book is designed to show us how to effectively use this spiritual toolkit to lift us up out of the problem that we have and get us onto a new way of life, rocketed towards the fourth dimension. Okay, that's what this book is about. This book is a spiritual vortex. When this book is opened up, God flows through the book. I've seen it. Okay. And when I have a new sponsee and he's like, oh man, I gotta go, or not a new sponsee, a sponsee of mine going to work with a new man for the first time. It's like, oh, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? You know, I'll give him some direction, but for the most part, man, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna open that book, and only good is going to come from that. Okay. Miracles are going to start flowing through this book as we get connected to the power. Okay. Capital P power, baby. Capital P power. G Dizzle. Oh, yeah. All right. There you go, Craig. There you go. All right. Back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked.
You know what I want to say there about this, believing in God, weak, even cowardly or whatnot. One of my biggest hurdles towards adopting God and being a godly human being was really self-centeredness because of my obsession with what other people think of me, an obsession that I am burdened with to this very day, right? This obsession with what people are thinking about Kevin. I was worried about what y'all would think about me if I became like a godly spiritual person, okay? And so really, my biggest prejudice was about God was a fear of not being cool, okay? And that fear of not being cool almost killed me, all right? Because, you know, how cool did I look passed out on the bathroom floor with my pants around my ankles? Okay. How, you know, I was not looking cool in my life, but it says here, that we have this sense of faith being weak or even cowardly, okay, or that you would think less of me if I became a God-fearing, a God-worshiping person or person devoted to God. And the reality is, guys, that the only thing that really brought me to God was just the terrific beating given to me by alcoholism over and over and over, year after year, drink after drink, until eventually, driven to AA under the lash of alcoholism, I became reasonable and became willing to look at this way of life. Back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet, in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost.
I remember the first time that I read that part about being enchanted by a starlit night or whatnot, thinking like, yeah, I've done that before. Okay, when you sometimes look at nature or look at the ocean or look at, enchanted by a starlit night, there's something that we feel. And he says there was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Okay. Back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reason, or to reassure you, rather. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God.
So we lay aside prejudice, okay? We lay aside the things that we think I know about God, okay? We lay aside the things and the resentments that I might have, okay? And what I like to say is, like, if you believe in God, but you're angry at God, you hate God, that's fine. That's beautiful. We've got steps for that, okay? We can help you with that, okay? If you believe in God, but you are afraid of God, you're terrified of God because of all the stuff that you've done, and you think that God is going to punish you, that's okay. That's brilliant. We've got steps for that. We can help you with that. The only thing in AA that we can't help you with is no, absolutely not. There is no God. There is no God. We can't work with that. Okay. What we're asking you to do, simply lay aside prejudice and express even just a willingness to believe. And we're not even asking you to believe in God. We're asking you to believe in a capital P power. That's it. Can you lay aside prejudice despite the fact that you might be angry at God, despite the fact that you might think God doesn't love you, despite the fact that you might be afraid of God, despite what may have happened to you in religion when you were little, all of that stuff, can we lay that aside for a minute and express just a willingness to believe in this power, capital P power? That's where we're going to start, okay? And so we've got the step 2 proposition, one of the first ones coming up here in just a few moments. Back to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men.
Okay, and so it says, guys, we were possessed by a new sense of power direction, provided we took other simple steps. What are those other simple steps? 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? Faith alone is not enough. Faith, to be vital, must be accompanied by unselfish, constructive action in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? To be vital, to be life-giving, our faith has to be accompanied with these simple steps, okay? And I believe that God is, it has been that way for me. Would it surprise you to learn that I came to AA as an atheist? Would it surprise you to learn that I came to AA as a man who was sure there was no God? Okay, I almost started a riot at a treatment center one time because I was trying to pit all the atheists in the treatment center. I was trying to manipulate all the atheists in the treatment center to rise up against all the people who believed in God. That's a true story. That's a true story. I almost got kicked out of a treatment center. Yeah, Shiva likes that. Shiva gives me the thumbs up. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the level of faith in God that I brought to AA. Okay. And that was none at all. And so consequently, like I said, AA can't work with, no, there is no God. No, there is. Oh, Greg, the first step 2 proposal will be here in just a minute. Okay. That's who I was. When I came to AA, I did not believe in God. I did not believe there was anything. Okay. And God, beaten into a state of reasonableness, I surrendered and began to do this work. And as a result of doing this work, my relationship with God has absolutely exploded within me today. Okay. I am absolutely certain that God is real. And I am certainly that that the realm of the spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive to those who will seek God. Okay. And understand, we are always seeking. I am always seeking. I am always looking for a deeper, more meaningful, more powerful relationship with God all the time. You guys have heard me talk about God being the great Wi-Fi in the sky. The problem, if I'm disconnected, is not that the Wi-Fi is not there. It's that there's something wrong with my connection, okay? And can my connection some days, can my connection on Monday be really strong and on Tuesday suddenly be trending down a little bit? You bet it can. And I only know one way to build that back up, and that's to make more deposits in the spiritual bank account. Okay. I just got to keep making deposits in the bank account, and my connection will get stronger every time. Okay. But it is not an eternal thing that I get connected to God. I can also get completely disconnected if I allow myself to. Okay. And so I constantly need to be working on building and rebuilding and re-strengthening this relationship with God. And eventually this spirit just starts to overflow out of us and into the lives of the people that we will help. Okay. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life. God, I ask now that you have all of me, good and bad. Take away every every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Okay, this relationship that we have with God will start to flow out of us, and we will start to impact the lives of many other people. Okay. I love the saying that as sponsors, our job initially early on is to take little handfuls of water to our sponsees, but our ultimate goal is to help them find the river. Okay, to help them find the river, and that's it's a beautiful way of life. So, page 47, top of page 47, Vincent.
Thanks, Kevin. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies, too, to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth, but if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was.
And thank God that AA allows us the freedom to choose our own conception of God. If Alcoholics Anonymous, if step 2 came to believe that Jesus or Muhammad or Vishnu or Scientology or anything had been in place of a power greater than ourselves and a God of our own understanding, I would never have gotten sober. Okay. But AA allows us the freedom to choose our own conception. And I've looked deeply, and I've tried to study and find out where exactly did this idea of a God of our own understanding come from. In Bill's story, they make it seem as though Ebby gave that to Bill, and that's not the case. That's not exactly what happened. Bill Wilson took some poetic license there. The fact is, at that point, Ebby Thatcher was part of the Oxford group, and the Oxfords were quite clear that they were a Christian organization. It was Christianity. And Bill Wilson, it says he could understand, he could see the need for this action, but he was not able to accept all of the tenets. Okay. And the tenet that he couldn't accept was the religious part of what Ebby was talking about, of the Oxford group. But for many years, the first few years, AA, I mean, it was very religious. They read the Bible, they read the book of James, they read First Corinthians, they read Sermon on the Mount. That's what it was originally. Now, there was a man named Jim Burwell who is sometimes attributed to this idea of choosing a God of our own understanding. He was an atheist in AA, in early AA, who stayed sober, and it drove the other guys nuts that this atheist was staying sober, and ultimately he drank again, and so on. Guys, when I think about, though, where in AA, where this idea of choosing a God of our own conception really came from, my feeling on it is that it was God expressing himself through our group conscience for the first time, and saying, you know what, if we don't open this up, the realm of the spirit, if we don't allow it to be broad and roomy, and allow people the dignity of choosing their own God and their own conception of God, millions of drunks like me are going to die needlessly. And so I believe it's one of the first experiences of the group conscience, God speaking through the group conscience in AA, when we chose to move forward with AA with this conception of God of our own understanding. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So, Vincent, keep reading for us, and Greg, to answer your question, we are going to read the first step 2 proposition, the first step 2 proposal right now in this paragraph.
Thanks, Kevin.
Back to you. Yeah, back to you, Vincent.
do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
Okay, guys, so and that's what it says. And this is the first step to proposal, okay? We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. And so this is the question. This is step two. Step two, part one, that I ask sponsees of mine, okay? Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe there is a power greater than yourself? Okay? We're not even asking him yet, do you believe in God? We're simply asking, do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? Capital P power. Okay? That's the first question. If we're going to move forward in this deal, they have to be either in belief or willing to believe that there could be something. Okay? Do you now believe? Or are you even willing to believe? I will tell you guys, 98% of the time, in my experience, probably more than that, like 99.8% of the time, with the many, 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 many men that I have sponsored and women that I have known, their answer is going to be yes. Their answer is going to be affirmative to that. You know, we're going to read in a little bit next week. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. I believe that we're born with it. Okay. Bill Wilson talks about feeling this power that was in him, but it's soon blotted out by worldly clamors. Okay. And so our own self beats this idea of God out of us, so to speak. And we think that we have to protect ourselves and take care of ourselves, and we become the only God that we know. But deep down, particularly when we're in pain, we become open-minded. You know, there's a great saying in the Hindu tradition that people who are closest to death are often closest to God. Okay? To use a World War II reference, anyone here ever heard the phrase, there's no atheists in foxholes? Anybody heard that before? What does that mean? That means that when you are in battle, in combat, and you're scared down in that little hole, and there's shells coming down on you, and the bullets are firing, and you know that you could die at any minute, no man or woman in that scenario is an atheist. Okay? No man or woman in that scenario does not believe in God. You better believe we are all calling out to some power. And so when I ask a new man, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there's a power greater than myself? Almost, and just so you know, when you go to sponsor people, you don't need to be afraid of them saying no and then having to get into some philosophical debate with them. Most of the time, people will say, yeah, I believe in something. Okay? They're not ready to say, they may not even be ready to call it God, but they believe in something. Now, in the rare occasion that someone has said, no, I don't really, like, I'm not sure that I do believe in anything, Kevin. I don't know. Okay? What I have done in those situations, and I will give to you as a tool to help, is I will ask those sponsees, okay, I understand you don't know if you believe in something, but let me ask you a question. Do you believe that I believe in God? Do you believe that? And they'll say, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I believe that you believe. Like, God, look at you. Yeah, of course. You're like, you know, you're the crazy God guy. Of course, I believe you believe. That's enough. We can start with that. If they can believe in my belief, then we can begin. We can start from there. And as soon as a man, what does it say? As soon as a man says he does believe, or he is even willing to believe, I emphatically assure him he's on his way. Okay? And we can give our sponsees a pat on the back and let him know you're doing good and you're going to be just fine. As soon as a man can say he does believe, or he is even willing to believe. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Beautiful. Okay. And when I think about a wonderfully effective spiritual structure, what do I think about? I think about a cathedral. Okay. Have you ever seen those beautiful cathedrals in Notre Dame? Those beautiful cathedrals, you know, a big church like that. But okay, and what we can do is like build a cathedral like that for our lives. But where does that cathedral reside? Inside. Inside. That I live within my Father's cathedral inside, where I can go and be safe and well and protected, regardless of the certain trials and low spots, the vicissitudes, the chaos that may be going on in my life outside. Inside, I have built this wonderfully effective spiritual structure. And I like to think of it as a big cathedral. That said, I've had other indigenous men that I've sponsored say to me like, hey, Kevin, it could be a teepee, it could be a sweat lodge too, you know, like, okay, sure. Whatever the structure is, the point is that we can build a place it referred to, you know, Jesus referred to it as the secret place inside. Okay, the secret place where we can go and be at one and peace with our Father. That is the spiritual structure that we can build. And what are we building it on? Simply, the simple cornerstone, the first step to proposal. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there is a power, capital P power, greater than myself? That's it. Okay, and that's it for tonight, guys. Okay, next week we will tune in for the exciting conclusion of step 2. We'll go through the second step 2 proposal next week. It'll be awesome. And I'm really glad to thank you all for being here tonight. I feel like I talked a lot tonight, but hopefully it was enjoyable anyway. We read a lot of the book and it was good. I hope you had a good time. I hope you everyone enjoyed it. I hope everyone got something out of it. I hope you all, most importantly, I hope that you have all taken something from this study that you can now go and share and be of service and love to someone else.